Paternity suits. They're always fun. And by fun, I mean not at all fun. Fortunately, I personally have never had to deal with a situation where there was a question of paternity, but I have known people that have been involved in that sort of thing, and it's always stressful for both sides. Whether it's a deadbeat dad denying a child that's obviously his, or whether it's a questionable mother trying to con a man into taking care of a kid that isn't theirs when they know that the child's not theirs. Either way, one side of the argument is being a big old jerk. But the nice thing about modern technology is that we can find the truth very easily. Modern paternity testing is very accurate and relatively simple. So, these kind of disputes are easy to settle in that way, as long as both sides are willing to cooperate. And given one side of the argument is usually being a big old liar, sometimes that's not the case. But either way, the reason I bring this up, because you're like, Darkness, why are you talking about this? Well, a few months ago, actually about a year ago now, I stumbled upon a story that I thought about doing then, but I didn't at the time. But now I think I kind of feel like talking about it because it's ridiculous. It is, in fact, one of the most ridiculous paternity suits I've ever read about, and it starts with one man named Kirk Kerkorian. Now, we've talked about Kerkorian before. He was one of the guys involved with that MGM airline I discussed, remember? The MGM Grand Air? The short-lived one. That wasn't one of his more successful outings. But he was a billionaire. He was a very, very successful businessman, and his story is a true rags-to-riches one as well. He was born June 6, 1917 in Fresno, California, to Armenian parents. His parents had escaped from present-day Turkey on a cattle boat during the horrific Armenian Genocide. So, when they got here, they didn't have a lot, and as a result, neither did Kirk. He would drop out of school in the 8th grade, but get into amateur boxing for a time. That was until World War II. Kirk had always been interested in aviation, and he didn't want to join the infantry for the war, so he cut a deal with a pioneer aviator named Pancho Barnes. She was kind enough to teach Kirk to fly as long as he agreed to milk and look after her cattle during the day, which he did. He got his commercial pilot certificate in just 6 months, and then started serving in World War II, but not in the direct way. He was never a combat pilot. He learned that the British Royal Air Force was ferrying Canadian-built de Havilland Mosquitoes over the North Atlantic to Scotland for use in the war. They paid him $1,000 per flight, but in case you think this was easy money, it really wasn't. True, he wasn't a combat pilot, and it was likely he wouldn't have to deal with enemy planes, but it was a very, very dangerous trip over the North Atlantic. The Mosquito's range was not really cut out for the whole ocean, and as a result, most pilots took the Montreal to Labrador to Greenland to Iceland to Scotland route. But Kerkorian preferred a more direct path, utilizing what was called the Iceland Wave, which called for a tailwind that allowed the mosquitoes that normally couldn't cross the whole Atlantic to at least make it to Iceland. But it wasn't necessarily super reliable. It was much more risky, but he still did it pretty often, and his boldness did actually kind of pay off. In May of 1944, Kerkorian, along with his wing commander, John D. Lacey Wooldridge, rode the wave and broke the old crossing record. Wooldridge got there first, arriving in Scotland in just 6 hours, 46 minutes. Kerkorian was just behind him at 7 hours, 9 minutes. He spent 2.5 years with RAF Ferry Command, and during his time, delivered 33 planes and flew to 4 different continents. Because of his poor upbringing, he had been pretty frugal with the money he made. He saved pretty much all of it, which at $1,000 a flight meant he had $33,000 at least, and he spent $5,000 of that on a private Cessna. He would then work as a general aviation pilot and made his first visit to Las Vegas in 1944. He started gambling a little bit, but he quit that activity pretty quick because he realized he was losing money. But he had made quite a bit, and in 1947 bought a whole airline. He spent $60,000 for Trans International Airlines, which at that time was just a small charter service designed to fly gamblers direct from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. He got a loan from Seagram's and bid to buy some surplus bombers from the war, And this part of the story shows the cleverness behind Kirk. See, he bought the planes, and he had to deal with that loan then. However, the planes still had their fuel. And in those days, airplane fuel in general was actually in short supply. They were dealing with a bit of a supply chain issue. So, he sold the fuel directly from the planes and used that money to pay off his loan. And he kept the planes because he had bought them. He would operate that airline until 1968 when he would sell it for $104 million. But where he really made his money was in Las Vegas. In 1962, he bought 80 acres across the Las Vegas Strip. And on that spot, the casino known as Caesar's Palace would be constructed. Kerkorian didn't actually own Caesar's, but he rented the land to them for an enormous profit. That combined with the eventual sale of the land entirely to Caesar's in 1968 made him $9 million. He would buy 82 more acres of land in 1967 on Paradise Road and funded the construction of what was known as the International Hotel, now called the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino. It was at the time the largest hotel in the world. In 1969, he would get a hold of the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer movie studio, MGM. And that's when he opened probably his most famous creation, the MGM Grand Hotel and Casino, which was, again, the largest hotel in the world at the time when it was finished, surpassing the International. And it was considered an amazing place to go, although sadly, it suffered a pretty horrific fire in 1980, which killed 85 people. Though Kirk wasn't directly implicated in anything criminal involving that, the hotel was up to code by the standards of the time, and when he rebuilt the hotel, there were a whole bunch of additions that were a lot more in line with modern fire safety expectations. And his career continued. He was involved in a whole bunch of other stuff that I could go into details on, but the point is that he became fabulously wealthy. The son of very poor refugees from a genocide became a billionaire in just a few decades. And one can't help respect that grind, because he really did work for it. And he never forgot where he came from, because Twitter hates billionaires. But Kirk isn't the classical stereotype of a billionaire, nor was he a miser. He was known to be fabulously generous with all his money. He founded his own charitable organization, the Lindsay Foundation, and when he passed away, basically all of his $2 billion estate was left to charity, and everyone that knew him thought of him as a really nice and generous person. When it came to philanthropy, he was on fire. Time magazine even named him the 10th most generous donor in America in the year 2000. But the thing about generosity, especially when you're in a position to be very generous, as he was, because he had a lot of money that he could just give away, is that there are people on this planet that do look to take advantage of people like that. We just don't live in a world where everyone has good intentions. The hippies were wrong. Love and peace and everything. Some people are just friggin' jerks, alright? This is a basic fact of life. I'm sorry. But in at least one situation, Kerkorian found himself the target of someone who was an opportunist. At best, you can call her that. Though I think the appropriate word might be gold digger. Kerkorian, throughout his life, was married 4 different times. The first to Hilda Schmidt from 1942 to 1952, the second time to Jean-Marie Hardy, which lasted 30 years, 1954 to 1984. She is the mother of both his actual daughters, Tracy and Linda, and true to his form, Kerkorian was known to be a loving and doting dad to both his girls, and even when he and Jean divorced, they still remained close friends. His 4th marriage was very late in his life, 2014, to Una Davis. That one only lasted 57 days. And the divorce proceedings were still underway when Kerkorian died on June 15th, 2015. But the 3rd marriage is the one we really want to focus on here. I bet you've been waiting for this. Alright, we want up with the paternity suit. What's this about this? Well, in order to get to that, we have to talk about Lisa Bonder. Lisa Bonder is a name you probably aren't familiar with, and that's understandable. But she was, for a time, an American professional tennis player. She played in the WTA Tour between 1981 and 1991, winning 4 different titles before she retired. In terms of her career, she was considered a fine tennis player. Better than me. I mean, probably better than most of us. She was professional, and she was good at it. But looking through the professional lens, I mean, she's no Serena Williams, but she did win 4 titles, and her career high ranking was 9. retiring with a positive win-to-loss record, 139 to 126. And Kerkorian wasn't the first man she was involved with. She married Tom Creese on January 10th, 1988, changing her surname to Bonder Creese. They had one son together named Taylor Jennings Creese. Though she stayed with her first husband for a few years, her interests began to wander a bit as she mingled with celebrities and very rich and powerful men. And Kerkorian was, particularly generous and kind to her. With her tennis career over, Bonder was looking for the next thing she could do. She wasn't an international celebrity anymore. A lot of people didn't even know who she was. But she wanted that money, that cheddar. And of course, she wanted to marry for it. But she was already married to Creese. Well, that's okay, she could just divorce him so she can marry Kerkorian. But Kerkorian wasn't really interested in marrying her at first. Because, for one thing, he wasn't stupid. Though they had mingled and been friends, and he was nice to her, well, he was also well aware that she was 48 years younger than him. He tried to dissuade Bonder from continuing to pursue him, insisting that he was happily unmarried, but she just wouldn't give it up. It didn't help that his kindness only encouraged her to continue pushing. At her insistence, they did become somewhat entangled, but he kept her at arm's length most of the time, and he really did not want to marry her, even though she kept insisting on it, because I love you, yeah, for real, I promise, 100%. It's definitely not about the money. You know, of course. I mean, I would love you even without the money. Yeah, definitely, for realsies. Kerkorian knew that this was the case, but he still spoiled her rotten because he considered her a friend, at least. When she told him that she wanted to move across the country over to New York City so she could start over, he gave her $1 million in order to accomplish this. Bonder did not, in fact, move across the country at all, and instead continued to pursue Kerkorian, asking again and again, please, can we just get married? He did give her a 5-carat diamond ring for her 30th birthday in 1995, but this was not an engagement ring, it was just a gift, and they wound up separating just 2 months later. And people kind of knew what was going on here. Bonder had a really big mouth, and constantly mentioned to her friends how she wanted to be the last Mrs. Kerkorian. Which translates to, I really want to inherit all his money. That's really what she wanted. She did date somebody else while they were separated, a man named Steve Bing, who was a wealthy heir to a Southern California real estate fortune. But this relationship did not last, and she resumed her pursuit of Kerkorian. She decided at this point that she wanted a house. Just a house in Beverly Hills. It needed renovation, though. So she was like, hey, Kirk, good buddy, old pal. How you doing? Could I have $4 million? Incredibly, Kirk agreed to this. She used $1.6 million to buy and renovate the new house, and the rest of it was, as she called it, moving on with my life money. Most normal people would call that the rest of our life money, because that's a lot of money he just gave you. Kerkorian would instead get involved with the aforementioned Una Davis, who he was seeing back then. They wouldn't get married till much later, 2014, right before he passed away, as I mentioned. But Bonder was not gonna give up. She wanted more, even though she'd already gotten at least $5.5 million out of him. She sabotaged his initial relationship with Una by claiming she was pregnant, and he was the father. Kerkorian, for whatever reason, decided to entertain this, even though at the time he was pretty convinced that he wasn't. They hadn't been involved that way, that much, and he was old. But he couldn't deny that there was a chance, however small, that this could be the case. And in order to placate Bonder, he cut another deal with her. Again, this wasn't a love situation from his part or her part. He was just trying to get rid of her and make her happy and shut her the heck up. He agreed to marry her, but not permanently. See, this was a 30-day contract marriage with a pre-arranged divorce. If they married and then divorced, she would get alimony as well as child support, to the tune of $50,000 a month. That would be plenty to take care of both her and her daughter for the rest of their lives. And he went through with it, figuring that was good enough. He still gave her the occasional gift, even a very expensive sapphire ring for her 34th birthday, but Bonder kept getting greedier and greedier, figuring this cash train wouldn't stop. I mean, this man's so generous, he's so nice, he's never gonna say no to her. Well, yeah, eventually, he was like, okay, you know what? That's it. The breaking point was a discussion between him and Lisa, with her effectively demanding a $25 million trust fund be put in place. Kerkorian had had enough. That was ridiculous. He'd already given her millions, and now she wanted 25 million more? And he still did not truly believe that this little girl was actually his. And he took steps to find the proof, as he believed that her former boyfriend, Steve Bing, was actually the kid's father. His attorneys would hire a man named Anthony Pellicano, who would get a hold of some of Bing's dental floss from the trash. They planned on using this DNA to prove that he was the dad, not Kerkorian. Lisa pushed back on this, saying that he couldn't do this, that it was wrong, that no, he really was the father, and she went full emotional blackmail on him by threatening to end her own life if he tried to prove that he wasn't the father. Kerkorian called her bluff because okay, no, we're not playing that freaking game. And guys. Again, I've never been in this particular situation, but I've known people that have, and I just need you to know that if you're ever in this kind of situation where you aren't sure if a kid is yours, and you just say, I would like to have a paternity test done, you know, you're not with the mother, you don't know who she's been with, it's one of those things, and you just want that peace of mind with a simple test, and she fights it, that's not a red flag. That's crimson. Because, let's be fair, logistically speaking, if we're talking about two people that aren't actually together, and knowingly have been with other people as well, but the mother is relatively sure that the man is the dad, there really shouldn't be an issue with doing that kind of test, because that'll make it clear. And then if the dad wants to be a deadbeat after that, that's on him, but the point is that it'll get to the truth of the matter quite easily. But Bonder really didn't want him to do that, and that's pretty friggin' suspicious. And indeed, they did get their paternity test, proving without a shadow of a doubt that Kerkorian—
You are not the father.
And Bing was. There were some other legal proceedings surrounding this, because technically Kerkorian's legal team shouldn't have done what they did. One of his attorneys, Terry Christensen, was convicted of racketeering for hiring Pellicano because Pellicano had tapped Bonder's phone, which was not a legal thing to do. Kerkorian basically never dealt with Bonder again after that. She had lied about the paternity, which is already bad enough, but she had spent the last few years demanding more and more, just wanting more money from him. She never cared about him, just his cash. And he'd been more than generous with her. Far more than any other logical person would have been. As he put it in his own legal documents, the only person Lisa Bonder has ever cared about is Lisa Bonder. It would also reveal that part of the reason he put up with it for so long is that Lisa had rigged a DNA test, leading him to believe that Kira was his daughter. She had taken DNA from one of Kirk's actual daughters and passed it off as Kira's, which is a tremendously monstrous thing to do. She even attempted to get a conservatorship over him, which is ludicrous, but all this was thrown out of court, and she was forced to run off to obscurity since then. Her daughter, for what it's worth, seems to have grown up quite well, although she never really had a relationship with her actual father. Steve Bing was not Kirk Kerkorian, at all. He was known to be a lavish spender, making bad investments pretty much all the time, and had numerous issues with multiple women and paternity suits. But he only ever acknowledged two. Kira is one of them, and the other one is Damien Hurley, who these days is a British actor. Bing would take his own life on June 22nd, 2020, while in quarantine during the pandemic. He had been known to have issues with drug addiction, and he had just lost a girlfriend due to an overdose. His career prospects had dried up, as his net worth was only about $300,000 at that point, when he had inherited $600 million. His life was wrought with failure, mostly of his own making, and he was never able to actually be a true father to Kira, or his other son, or any of the others he simply didn't claim. Kirk Kerkorian would go on with his life, leading it the way he always had, as a wealthy but very generous individual. He passed away on June 15th, 2015, at the age of 98, and his charitable foundation, the Lindsay Foundation, during its existence, donated more than $1 billion, which Kirk insisted his name not be tied to, as he didn't want people to think he was doing it for glory or anything. But many people knew who was sending all this money, particularly over to Armenia. He knew where his parents had come from, and why, and he would use his vast wealth to finance more than $200 million of infrastructure projects in Armenia for the reconstruction of schools and streets, renovating museums, theaters, concert halls. Anything you could think of, he helped, and the people there were truly grateful. He was declared an honorary citizen of Armenia and bestowed the title of National Hero of Armenia, which is their highest state award. He was a good man, and didn't deserve to be taken advantage by someone like Lisa Bonder, who only wanted more money for herself. Fortunately, he was able to see through her eventually, and didn't get continually taken advantage of. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fun farewell.